And of course, they went back and quoted F.C. Bauer. They also quoted Rudolf Bultmann and other critical liberal scholars that said that the Gospels were written so many years, Bauer said 200 years after the time that Jesus lived, that really we don't have anything but legend and myth. We have no way of getting back to the historical facts, so really we don't know too much about Jesus. We believe and hope that he actually lived, but that's about as far as we can get. And anybody that says differently just isn't informed. What would you say to that?
John, I think that there's a very good piece of evidence to start out with. The most controversial of the four Gospels is John. John is said to be too theological, too developed, and it's too personal and too evangelistic. And all right, let's take that then. John Ryland's papyrus. There's a little scrap of paper, about 2.5 inches by 1.5 inches, but with a text from John chapter 18, dated by those who study papyri and the shape of the letters and the quality of the materials. And here it is, way up north in Egypt, deep in Egypt, dated 125 AD 125. This was so impressive that the William Foxwell Albright, then at Johns Hopkins, was so impressed. He said, this cannot be a 2nd or 3rd century Christian gospel in the Christian century. He said, it must be the earliest of the gospels. So he dated John's gospel 45, AD 45. Now that's much more conservative than what I am. I would be happy with 85, 90, AD 90 will be fine, thank you. But he thought it was so impressive, and it's in circulation so far deep into Egypt that he was required to put it there. So I think there's very, very good evidence for going against the old hypothesis of F.C. Bauer and Bultmann and others.
Yeah, Bultmann said that John was influenced by the Gnostic writing of the 2nd century, and of course that really cut into his theory if the book was already written.
Yeah, the facts are hard to handle.
Yes, Bob?
And I think we have to point out that one of the greatest liberals who wrote the book Honest to God, which many college students were forced to read and endure, has written a book entitled Redating the New Testament, in which all of the New Testament books were written before AD 70, the destruction of the temple, and he did this on the basis of internal evidence. Here is a liberal who is more conservative now than the conservatives, plus you have the book by Dr. William White and David Estrada, based on the work of Father O'Callaghan, who was working with the Dead Sea Scrolls, of the possibility, according to the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, that in Cave 7 of the Dead Sea Scroll area, you found 27 little portions of the New Testament, some of which must be dated 57, 64, on the basis of what else was in that jar. While the conclusions are not altogether confirmed, they're still fighting about it, I know, in Denmark. As this evidence rolls in, and I read the New York Times, an entire page, they quoted liberal theologians who said, I don't care if it shows in the end these were portions of the New Testament. I will refuse to accept it because it will destroy all of liberal scholarship. It is a case of don't confuse me with the facts. My mind is already made up.
Dave? Just for the ordinary person like us down here that don't have all of these degrees, you know, and suppose a person doesn't have this evidence available to them. Let's just read the Bible. John claims it was what he saw, he handled, and so forth. They claim to be eyewitnesses. Now, either these guys had the secret of longevity, and they're still living way back there in 200 or 300 years later, and well, how come they didn't write it sooner, you know, and how come they could live so long? Or else they're liars. Whoever wrote this book is lying and pretending to be somebody that they aren't. And as you read the New Testament and the moral impact it has in people's lives, you can't believe this thing was concocted by a bunch of liars.
Right. Walter, did we take those writings, and some people say that, you know, it came through all those monks in the Middle Ages, and some of them were drunk and some of them weren't too sharp and they made a lot of errors. How do we know that the copies that we've got today, that the Bible we have today, is really what John and Mark and Luke and Matthew, what they actually wrote?
Well, we have the science of textual criticism, which is one where there are so many copies for the New Testament, going back so close to the actual writing of them, that it has been, I think, possible to get that text out, and with all variations and with all kinds of classes of different readings that would come, so that basically we're talking between 4,000 major manuscripts up to 25,000 if you're talking about parts of it. No other book has been so well attested. No series of events, no historical event in the whole of all of history has had as much documentation as the New Testament documents. So indeed, they are extremely reliable.
All right. Now let me ask all of you to do something a little different tonight, and that is that the cults, those in the occult, those that are liberal scholars, also all join together and say one thing. They say that if you were to accept those New Testament documents as being reliable, historical documents that give us information about Jesus, even then, if anybody reads it, you will see that Jesus never claimed to be God. And they repeat this over and over again. Would you mind if I just called on each one of you to grab a portion of any of the verses there and tell us why that really speaks to you, and why people can't slip off of the fact that it's clear to you that through those words Jesus is making a direct claim to being God. Walter, I'll give you the first shot.
Well, I still think the best text ever is John chapter 10, verse 30. I and my Father are one. And he that has seen me has seen God. John chapter 14. Now, you can fight about that, but if you do, you go against the audience that was there. They understood this and picked up stones. They were going to stone him because they said, he's blaspheming. He's claiming to be God. And Jesus did not say, whoa, 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 wait a minute. That's not what I'm saying at all. Hold it down. There's no record of that. I would have thought that was there for the Jesus seminar and those who are dropping stones in to say whether Jesus said this or not and whether it's true or it's not. I wish they'd look at those other stones, not the ones they're dropping in the basket, but indeed the ones that the Jews picked up because they understood him clearly. He claimed to be God.
Joan, coming from a Jehovah's Witness background that denied that Jesus was God, what verse or verses really struck you that proved the point that he was claiming to be God?
Well, when I finally got a correct translation of John 8:58, knowing who the I am really is from Exodus 3:14 and 15, his plain statement to the Jews in John 8:58, before Abraham was or came into existence, I am. You just can't get away from that. But they tried. They tried real hard. As I grew up, I learned he was a has-been. A have-been. And that is their translation of that. And it's just not correct. It doesn't stand up under any good scholarship, as my colleagues can say.
Dr. Anish Sharosh, coming from the Middle East and being an Arab Palestinian, what evidence in the New Testament convinced you that Jesus was claiming to be very God?
Besides saving me, changing me, teaching me to love my enemies, give me security for now and eternity, I find that the last chapter of the Old Testament declares, and suddenly the Lord himself will come to his temple. And when Jesus appeared on the scene, he could make the claims, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the light of the world. I am the resurrection and the life. I am. And I am is equated, of course, with God's name. Secondly, the most remarkable of all that my colleagues would agree with is John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was what?
God.
God. He's alive. He's real. He can save you and anybody who wants to. Only he can do that.
Yeah. Yes, right. We're not afraid that Dr. Anish isn't going to heaven. We're just afraid he's going to shout and go right on by. Dave Hunt, in your studies, what has been the saying of Jesus or the words that Jesus used that persuaded you he was God.